Hello, everyone joining us today. My name is Harbhajan, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the LSESU India Forum 2022 sports panel. I'm delighted to announce that we have an esteemed panel joining us today and helping us carry forward the legacy of LIF as the United Kingdom's largest student-led India-centric conference. Today, we will be broadly discussing the role of sports in nation building, country branding, and career development. Joining us today, we have an incredibly well-accomplished panel from different sporting panels from different sporting avenues. We have Mr. Harbhajan Singh, Padma Shri Award winner. Mr. Singh is India's most successful off-spin bowler and is the first Indian to take a test hat-trick. He played a crucial role in the 2007 2020 World Cup winning squad and the 2011 World Cup winning squad, and has taken more than 700 international wickets. For the Indian Premier League, he played for the Mumbai Indians, Chennai Super Kings, and most recently for the Kolkata Knight Riders. He retired from all forms of cricket recently in December. And outside of cricket, Mr. Singh has now been a TV show host, an actor, and a successful commentator. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Rahul Sanghvi. Having started his career as a left-arm off-spinner, Mr. Sanghvi has gone on to represent India in international cricket. And during his playing career, he set a world record for the best bowling figures in List A cricket, which has taken more than 2 decades to break. Mr. Sanghvi then successfully served as a selector at the Delhi and District Cricket Association, and is the current team manager at the most successful IPL franchise, the Mumbai Indians. He's popularly known in the cricketing fraternity as the man with a fantastic eye for young talent. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Ms. Tania Sachdev. Ms. Sachdev is a well-known Indian chess player who holds the title for International Master and Women Grandmaster. She was first introduced to the game of chess at the age of 6 and won her first international title at the age of 8. As a 2-time chess champion, and a 3-time and current Commonwealth Women's Chess Champion, Ms. Sachdev is also a recipient of one of India's high sporting honours, the Arjuna Award. She's been a great source of inspiration for many young sports enthusiasts in India to choose the game of chess as a career choice. Thank you for joining us today, ma'am. Mr. Somdev Devvarman. Mr. Devvarman is a former Indian tennis player, who reached a career high ranking of world number 62. He hit the headlines for being the only collegiate player to have made 3 consecutive finals at the National Collegiate Athletic Association, winning back-to-back finals in his junior and senior years at the University of Virginia. When representing his country, Mr. Devvarman has won both singles and doubles titles at the 2010 Asian Games, as well as being the first male to win a Commonwealth gold in singles tennis in front of a home crowd at the 2010 Delhi Commonwealth Games. For his contributions to the game of tennis, Mr. Devvarman received an Arjuna Award in 2011 and the Padma Shri in 2018. Today, Mr. Devvarman is a commentator and one of the most sought-after tennis coaches. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Mr. Vikrant Gupta. They call him the most stylish sports news anchor on Indian television. Mr. Gupta is widely respected for his cricket-related news and analysis. He is managing editor for Sports Duck and the Aaj Tak channel, part of the India Today group. As statistics reveal, his shows in the evening are the most viewed and followed by Indian cricket fans. Having started his career as a reporter at the Indian Express, Mr. Gupta has come a long way to become the most popular sports anchor of India. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Today's event will be moderated by Mr. Gaurav Bahirwani, who's been closely associated with LIF for many years now. Recipient of many awards, Mr. Bahirwani is a leading brand valuation and human brand expert. He's the founder and CEO at the 116 Network Limited, an investor-backed sports and entertainment company headquartered in London, with offices in India and the UAE. Mr. Bahirwani completed his post-graduation studies in the UK with 2 master's degrees. He's widely acknowledged for the role as the former brand chief of one of India's most iconic sportsmen, Mr. MS Dhoni. Mr. Bahirwani has recently produced a film based on Team India's historic win at the inaugural T20 World Cup in 2007. Thank you for joining us as a moderator, sir. Before opening the floor to discussion, I would like to make a few housekeeping notes. As this is an online event, we would like to request our audience to bear with us if there are any technical difficulties. This session will run in a fluid manner and will be an open discussion. If any of our audience members would like to ask any questions, please feel free to ask us in the Q&A section below, and we will make sure to pick out and pass on the most relevant questions to our panelists. If you would like to direct a question at any particular panelist, you can specify as such when asking. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our moderator, Mr. Bahirwani.
Thank you, Vansh, for this wonderful introduction. I think before I get into the session, I think it's only fair to acknowledge a group of very passionate students at the London School of Economics who've worked very hard putting this conference together. A special mention to Hasti and Meher, who are the front runners. And it's for them that we are all together here. So thank you very much for that. Let me first thank all of you listening to us as well for investing your valuable time with us on a Thursday. I'm a little perplexed thinking, how do I greet you guys? Because, the panelists from India and those joining us from this part of the world, good evening to all of you. Those who are in the UK and perhaps in Europe somewhere, good afternoon. We have Mr. Somdev here, who is basking under the morning sun in El Salvador. So good morning to you. And we have some people in the audience who are in Australia tucked in bed. So perhaps good night to you. So that's typically how the greetings go. Now, Vansh was very kind to introduce me, but I'm not as famous as my panelists. So let me reiterate, my name is Gaurav Bahirwani, and I'm going to moderate this session today. We have a very diverse and experienced panel with a mix of sportsmen, sportswomen, sports media, and sports management. And I think each one of you will share your insights on some of the topics I've sort of prepared for this session. Now, one of the goals today is that, all of you listening here will take away something, perhaps a fresh idea, a new idea, a new perspective, a new hope, something that you can apply to your life and benefit from it. Now, here's the format of what we're going to do. So I'll kick off the conversation with each of the panelists who will walk through their background and how they became who they are today. I think that should be a good start. And once we've gone through that, I'm going to ask some questions and then, broadly put it out to the panelists to react. We have about 75 minutes today. So I think we should be able to cover everything that we have intended to. And in the end, we will take some questions from the audience. You're most welcome to share your questions as the session goes on in the chat mode. So if that sounds good, I'm going to start off just to set the context. Indian sport today is very youthful, energetic. It's moved past the handicaps of the history and the weight of heritage. And if you look at these sportsmen today, the young men and women, they have fearless brashness, an edge and confident optimism that that didn't reflect in the earlier days of Indian sport. So there's been a drastic change in terms of where Indian sports has reached today. Now, if you look at the Indian market, particularly, we have celebrated our powerhouse of cricketing talent across the country. We have delivered some of the best cricketers in the world from this country. But when you look at the other sports, barring a few individuals like Somdev, Tania, who have success in competitive sport, we haven't been able to build a very strong bench strength like cricket across various sports. Now, in 2012, India delivered one of the strongest Olympic performances in London. We had 6 podium finishes then, if I remember correctly. And then when we went to the Rio in 2016, it came as a rude shock to us because we went with a contingent of 117 and came back with 2 medals. And at the recent Tokyo Olympics, of course, we came back with 7 medals. Now, a constant criticism faced by the Indian sport is the failure of us performing well on international stages outside cricket, of course. Now, what I want to start off with is, let me start by requesting each of my panelists to take about 3 minutes each and tell us how was it when you were growing in India back in the days when the universe of sports was very different then, and what appears today is very different. So if you were to start off today, would there be any difference in terms of how you approached your area of expertise? And I would like to start with, of course, Tania, because you're the youngest perhaps here.
Hi, Gaurav. Hi, everyone who's joining us. I think this is a really interesting point that you bring up, is just this generational difference of what we're seeing and how sports is developing now compared to how it was when we started off. And it's a different animal completely. I started playing when I was 6. And at that time, I come from Delhi. I play chess. There was absolutely no culture of the game in my city. Today, I think we can say even beyond cricket, there is a big culture for a lot of different sports. And I think there's a lot to pay for it when it comes to leagues, when it comes to opportunity, when it comes to government support. It's all transformed over the last decade or so. I remember when I got into the game, it was a hobby for me. It was something my parents put me into as a class that sort of kept me busy. But I fell in love with it and I wanted to play more and more, and it became a big part of my life. Eventually, I dreamt of playing for the country, and it took me a long time to get there. My first international trainer, my first Grandmaster training happened when I was 17 years old. Today, kids get it when they're 8 years old, which is amazing because that's how you go and perform and get all the medals that they've been getting for the country. By the time they're 14, we've got the youngest Grandmaster who was 12 years old. And that was unheard of when I started playing. So I think it comes down to also a lot of, I think, people being aware of the achievements that different sporting icons have had in a particular sport that, let's say, a child takes to, that combined with a general increase in infrastructure, in media support, in corporates moving beyond your typical, well, let's say a Bollywood star or a model endorsing and taking these sporting icons to bring out brands and showing that there is a viable career and sports is no more just a supplement to your academics to get into a good college or a good university, but it is a career option now. And I think that's transformed the game to the very best that we've seen. I mean, there's no better time to be a sports person than today in the country. But that said, we're a country of over 1.3 billion people. And I think being in the sports industry and being a sports person myself, I really believe that it's amazing when we win a medal at the Olympics, but it's also really disheartening to see that we celebrate 2 medals so much, because I really think that India has the potential and the talent and the performance that we've seen to go far beyond that. And it comes down to, I think, training infrastructure, having a longer vision, which we're working at, and hopefully it is, and slowly it is getting better. And I have no doubts that in the next 2 Olympics, we'll see a major leap from where we're at. Yes, it's only getting better from here. And it's amazing to see that.
Thank you, Tania. Thank you. So, do you have a point of view on this?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, first of all, Gaurav, for having me on this. And it's really nice to be a part of a panel, a part of a very well-established panel. So thank you for having me. I think the first thing I would like to say is, one of the most underlying principles of sport is how do you evolve and how do you continuously get better at whatever it is you're doing, no matter what level you're at, whether you're at the grassroots, whether you're, intermediate, whether you're an amateur, and certainly when you're a professional, the underlying question is how do you get better? How do you progress? So I think, for me growing up, it was, we weren't really exposed to a whole lot, looking back now to thinking of the training that I got when I was 14, 15, it's very different than the training that Europeans, Americans, considering tennis is such a global sport, that people from those countries were getting. And it took me a few years to kind of understand that. And when I was 18, 19, that's when I moved abroad for the first time. And that's when I first, with all due respect to all the coaching that I got in India, that's the first time that I actually was exposed to something of world-class standards. And that's actually when my improvement actually happened. So looking at that perspective as an athlete, I think I appreciate Tania's sentiments and enthusiasm when she says, we're going to definitely get better. But I think more than just that, the way I would look at it is, how are we actually going to accomplish that? And again, as an athlete, the most important thing is honesty, brutal honesty almost. And this is required in order to get better, in order for improvement, because there's no hiding behind closed doors and curtains, especially when it comes to excelling at the international level. And the reason behind that is because, your competition is doing everything it can to improve leaps and bounds. So if we want to be compared to a real sporting nation, I think we have a lot of improving to do. And again, there's pros and cons to that. And I think there's certainly, a little bit of that we're not capable of that. I think we are capable of that. And, a lot of the champions, especially including the ones on this panel, I think they are the outliers. And I'd be happy to hear what everybody else thinks as well. But I do certainly think that we have a lot of improving to do in pretty much every department.
Thank you, Som. Started off, and you've seen the cricketing world now. What's happening with the youngsters, and we'll be touching upon that fame and fortune that's happening at a very young age, very shortly. But what's been your experience, when you started off back in your days, and in what you see today?
Well, good evening, everyone. Good to be here with all of you, with all the champions. Yeah, Gaurav, when I started playing cricket, all I had was a dream. And I come from a very small little town called Jalandhar And from there to reach to where I've reached, obviously, if I look back, it's a great journey. And we didn't have much to practice. We didn't have much to, do there. But only thing I had was that will to become Kapil Dev, And obviously what Tania said, yes, there is a lot of, things which we can improve infrastructure wise. What we can give it to the kids nowadays, and what the kids have now. We didn't have that then. But all you have to do is, as a player, you have to have a will. First of all, what do you want to become? If you have the will, your 80% things are covered then. All you have to do is just work hard at your game. Whether you have the infrastructure or not, you talk about Muhammad Ali or Maradona to all the greats, have done wonders in the world. They didn't have the infrastructure, but all they had was that will to be someone very, very special. And they had that talent and they worked really hard. And that's exactly what I did in my childhood, worked harder than the others. Obviously it paid off. I'm very grateful. And today's generation, obviously, they have a lot of infrastructure. I'm talking about cricket. Obviously, I don't know whether tennis or chess or any other sports. I'm sure there's a lot to improve in terms of infrastructure wise. But I think it comes down to the individual. Nowadays, if I see a guy like me, who's 10, 12-year-old when I started playing cricket, they're playing games on the video. Video games. They are not going to the ground. So that if you want to become something, you have to get out there and do what you want to become. And for that, whatever is required, wo karna padega. If you don't do that, dreams will not, fulfill. So my journey was, coming from Jalandhar, work hard, whether you have anything to do or not, just work hard, run. If you can't run, just walk. If you don't get facilities to bowl, just bowl on mud wherever you can bowl. So that's exactly was my case. And I ended up playing 100 test matches for India, becoming third highest wicket taker for India. It was all due to my passion. It was all due to my dedication towards the game. Had I had these sort of opportunities or these sort of infrastructure, what we have today in cricket, I could have achieved little more. But I'm quite happy the way things have gone for me. I'm very happy.
Thank you, Vajiba. I think you raise a very important point about, the advent of technology, which is keeping kids inside the house a lot more now. And I think that's where parents should be pushing kids to go out and play rather than, allowing them to sort of spend so much time using technology at home. And video games is perhaps one of the things that we'll probably touch upon in a bit. Vikrant, I want to come to you because, you've been covering sports for a very long time and you've seen the game of cricket very, very closely yourself. You play as well. What is the difference that you have seen over the years? Because, you've been covering sports across, various parts of India. And what is it that has changed? You covered World Cups, you've covered the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, and so on. So what has changed?
Thanks, Gaurav. I think what has changed is what Tania said. For Tania to say that India should not be celebrating 2 medals at Olympics, you should be wanting more. I think that is what has changed. See, I grew up in an age where for 16 years, 1980, Moscow was the last when India won a gold medal in hockey. 84, 82, 84, 88, 92, 96 was the first time that India won a medal. And then you had one in 2000, you had one in 2004. But Beijing was the turning point, where you had 3, London you had 6, and then as Tania said, if you had 6 then, 2 was bad performance, but we were celebrating it. And I think the last Olympics may have given India hope because now your medals are spread. It's not just cricket. Cricket, of course, is India's bread and butter in terms of sports, but there are other sports as well. Badminton, you've done well. Wrestling, you've done well. Shooting, you've done well. There are other sports as well. So this is what has changed. Now I am on the other side of the fence, to be very honest, Gaurav. People like Rahul, Harbhajan, Som, Tania, they are the icons of India. I just connect the dots. But I'll just give you an example. Since Harbhajan is here, so there were 2 Harbhajan Singhs in 2007. There was one Harbhajan Singh who was in the West Indies for the main World Cup, the 50-50 World Cup. And there's another Harbhajan Singh who was in South Africa about 4 or 5 months later for the T20 World Cup. Now, India lost the World Cup in West Indies, and it was termed to be the worst team India has ever fielded. So those players had to get out of West Indies, and they came back home. They had to take shelters. Their families needed protection, and they were the villains for the country. And then there was this Harbhajan Singh who won the World T20 in South Africa. They came back to Bombay. They had that open bus parade. I think the problem is, at times, we do not treat sports the way you should. And I, on behalf of the media, I'm also guilty. Every day, you would paint them either black or white. They win or they lose. Even though sports teaches us that you can win in sport, but you don't lose. You win or you don't win. But the terminology that we have is XYZ won, XYZ lost. If there are two people competing, one can win. But then I think this terminology of a defeat or a loss in sports is bad. Life is the same. I mean, there are phases that you go through where you don't win, but you just survive and wait for the golden sun to come out. I mean, it's the same as in cricket. Rahul and Harbhajan, they are bowlers. I wish we had a batsman who could tell us when the ball is new, the wicket is fresh, there's moisture, and you're not very well acquainted with the pace and the bounce of the wicket. You just try to be there. You just survive. Don't give away your wicket, because after lunch, when the sun comes out, the bowler gets tired, the ball gets older, that is when you score runs. So I think sport has taught me, must have taught many others also, of how you look at victory and how you look at defeat. And I'm just an amateur cricketer. I still play. But the day we win, Gaurav, I go home not thinking about the game at all. So I think as if, we won the World Cup. The day we lose, or the day we don't win, or the day I fail, that is when I start questioning myself. And that is when you reinvent yourself. Harbhajan Singh and the Indian team may have reinvented themselves after that West Indies World Cup defeat. And that is why they did well in South Africa.
Thank you, Vikrant. That was very, very insightful. Rahul, I'll come to you now. You've been someone who's scouted a lot of talent for Mumbai Indians, particularly as well. In your time when you were playing cricket, compared to obviously the talent that you see now when you're scouting them, what is the difference that you see? Are they given more privileges in terms of infrastructure that is available to them today compared to what you had in your time? Or is there a sense of passion, which, Harbhajan said, that the willingness to sort of achieve is what you need. And that's something that you're seeing more often now in kids than perhaps, what you saw in your older times. Sorry, you'll have to unmute yourself, Rahul.
Hi, Gaurav. First of all, thanks for having me on the show, and a warm hello to all my panelists and all the guests who are watching the show. When we started, obviously when I started by chance, and that chance happened because I was passionate and I enjoyed playing a sport, and I've enjoyed being outdoor. Like any sportsman starts with that enjoyment and passion to be on outdoor and play a game. And I was in a good school in Delhi, and it just happened. And then I was growing in the game. And obviously in those days, there was hardly any infrastructure or a recognition or money involved, because only 15 could play for India and rest were playing first class cricket at nominal fees or whatever. So there was a huge discussion at home whether I should be playing or not playing. But my parents were good enough to say that if this kid likes playing this game, is passionate about this, he'll find his way. And that really helped. And I can say that, in those days, we always used to say that despite the system, the players come through, cricketers come through. And that happens because every nook and corner, a kid wants to play a game. And fortunately, India, with a billion population, they follow cricket passionately. And most of the kids want to play cricket. And that's the reason we keep producing so many good cricketers. Obviously, in those days, the systems were really bad. But obviously, with money coming in, and when money comes in, there's compliances which come in. And when when you have compliances and everything else, professionalism comes in, there's systems in place. And infrastructure grows and many other things happen. So the only difference from those days and nowadays, I think the talent keeps coming in, But the cricket, the game has grown because the money has, I'm purely talking from cricket point of view. I'll come to other sports later. Cricket, Indian cricket system has produced a lot of cricketers, and then the money has come in. And because of that, the infrastructure is there, and there's a system, and science and technology has played a big role as well. Because I remember our days, we had injuries, we didn't even know there's a physio, something called a physio which exists. We didn't know anything about nutrition. We would have chola bhatura and play a cricket match. So I think the systems have come in place, and that's the best part. And talking about talent, obviously India is such a huge country. Even after the kids who are playing at the top level or playing in a system like at the state level, there are so many players who still are very good. And thanks to IPL, with IPL coming in again, because money coming to cricket, something bigger had to happen. IPL league has started. There are so many players who are not playing first class, but still they still get a chance to play IPL. So it's in a way, I would say, like in the past, everyone used to play, but there would only 15 who would be playing at the top level. Now that pool has grown bigger, with players playing at the top level for India, playing at the state level, and so many more playing at the IPL, which is again a top level, which again is growing the game. Economics is growing, everything is growing. And I think the similar thing is happening in other sports, but not in all sports. It's only about badminton, tennis, or kabaddi. Now the leagues have started. And that has also happened because there's a lot of private partnership which is happening now. Corporates have got involved, and they want to pump in money and see if something can happen. So I think it's a good stage for India right now, that, you know, we are at a stage, as Tania said, that yes, we have started doing well, but there's lots more to be achieved. And I think there's a long way to go, and things will happen.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you. I think, you pointed out something very interesting, that the drastic difference perhaps from the olden days to now is the amount of money that has come into sports, particularly from the private sector. And that sort of sets the context for my next question. If you look at back in the days, a conversation around fame and fortune in Indian sports was quite uncommon. After the '83 World Cup, I remember the Indian cricket team players were paid 1,500 rupees as match fees at that point of time. And if you contrast it to a 2011 World Cup winning team, where we have one of the players here, and I'm sure you'll concur this, Baji, that each player received a huge amount from the BCCI, and then of course from the respective state associations also. So there was a drastic difference in terms of what money has done. But when you represent a country on a global stage, it's always a matter of great pride. I mean, that's something which is given. So in India, in the last 2 decades, I think if you look at sports, fame, and fortune, they're now being used in the same sentence. We've seen an explosion in wealth creation by athletes across various sports, and all thanks to the IPL, of course. But being in the business myself, I've witnessed how brands are willing to pay top dollar to associate with the biggest name. I've done multiple deals in the last 7 and 8 years, and I can tell you that there's been a drastic change in terms of what one is willing to spend, just to associate their brand with one of the big names in the game. The first part of my question here is the rising fame and fortune in Indian sports too fast, too soon? I think, Baji, I would like you to answer this first. That, do you see that, this is suddenly becoming something that perhaps when you started off, the fame and fortune was not as visible as it is today. So, do you think it is too fast and too soon for, I think, a lot of young kids who are playing sports today?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the right time. The money should come into the game, not just in cricket, but in all the other games as well. We talk about chess, badminton, tennis, or hockey. Why not? If the money comes, obviously you bring a lot of other people's attention to come and play the game. And it's a great time to play cricket, I would say, when the IPL is happening. And, you see a guy like Ishan Kishan. He's just gone for 15 crore, and Rahul Sanghvi, his team only picked him. And my team, I played for that team for 10 years. So it is probably the right time. You see the American sports, where do they play? They play just in America. They play this game called basketball, and they become world famous player, and the kind of money they get, that's insane. And cricket, I think there's still a lot of money will be coming in, in coming years. But I want other sports also to grow. It's just not about cricket. Cricket, we have a lot of cricketers are coming up. But yes, Tania made a very good point. We celebrate those 2 medals. But, with the kind of population we have, we should be getting about 200 medals. Why not? And obviously when the money comes in, a lot of people will get, attract towards it, that yes, they want to become this, and where they have a future. Some of the athletes, they play the game, they play the sports, they are Olympian. They don't even have a job. We have to, make sure that players are looked after. If the players are looked after, you see the growth in every game.
Thank you, Baji. Som and Tania, I think you represent two different and very distinct sports. Do you see that happening in your domain as well? Is the fame and fortune coming too quickly, or is that lacking in particularly your sports that you represent? Anyone, Tania, you can perhaps respond.
I'm going to go one step forward from what Harbhajan just said. I think it's too little too late, but it's happening. That's the good thing. And completely agree with the point that at the end of it is a pyramid game, right? If you've got grassroots level, a lot of players, a lot of young talent taking up sport from a young age, boys and girls, that's when, as it goes up, you're going to have more players perform at an international level and go represent India in the Olympics or the World Championships and such tournaments. Now, it all comes down to parents at that point believing that this is a viable career option for them. Otherwise, we go back 20 years where it's like, हाँ, तुम्हें ये game तो पसंद है, पर engineering कर लो या doctor बन जाओ. And that's where it has to come down to, that you have the ability to follow your passion through because you know that you can make money out of it. It is a lot of pride and a lot of glory to represent the country. And I think that's a rush and a feeling that nothing compares to. But along with that, one has to also have the security that not just while you're playing and the formative years of becoming that strong, but also, let's say, once you retire from the sport, it has a shelf life, that you're not going to be struggling. Because you've spent so many years working and training and giving up such a big part of your life to play for the country or to perform at that level, that I think one can't dilute the importance of having it as a career when it comes to monetization or money, vis-a-vis the fact, the glory it brings as well. So I think it's happening, but should have happened a long time ago. And I think a big role to play in that is how our media and our social media has changed the world. And I think people today, parents especially today, even teenagers, young adults, they see sporting icons and I think they want to get associated with them. They want to be like them. It's all these ethical values, the kind of things that you learn in sports that has a far more reaching appeal than, let's say, I think other industries, which were the only industries that people were looking up to 10 years ago.
Thank you, Tania. So you have a point to make on this. What do you feel about tennis?
I mean, I loved hearing what Bhaji had to say. Honestly, I think the money should be coming into sport. And I think honestly, cricket, it's just very different in other sports than it is for cricket, unfortunately. And that's just the truth. That's the reality. When you're talking about tennis specifically, I think in the last 20 years, and I'm not being, I think I'm being pretty fair when I say this. In the last 20 odd years, there's been maybe 5, maybe 6 players that have made money from playing tennis. And those 5 or 6 players are Leander, Mahesh, Sania, Rohan, Bopanna, myself, maybe a couple others, maybe, and again, the reason that is because when you're looking at success in a sport like tennis, it's just very different because, it's one of the most popular sports in the world. It's played by over 120, 150 countries. And you're comparing yourself to, world champions like Roger, Rafa, Novak, Serena Williams, so on and so forth. And so suddenly your standards, you have to be within the top 100 or top 100 in the world in singles and, top 50 in the world in doubles in order to actually make money. So I don't think that, unfortunately, I don't think we can have the same conversation as we would in cricket as we would in tennis. And the reason being is we obviously don't have the same kind of success. So for me, we would almost take a step back and say, well, what do we now need to achieve that kind of success? And why are we not achieving that kind of success? And that's where you again point to the, how are we trying to develop the sport what steps have we taken in the last 10, 15 years to actually ensure that we do see better tennis players, we do see better governance, we do see better coaching systems, things that, again, has it improved in other sports? Absolutely. It's gotten a ton better in badminton, it's gotten a ton better in wrestling, shooting, cricket, obviously, chess, perhaps, this is what I'm hearing right now, obviously. But in terms of several sports, I think we've taken a few steps back. And again, that's why, I would say, come back to my original point is, as an athlete, the most important thing is to ask yourself, how am I getting better? Am I getting better? How am I getting better? What do I need to get better? And if we as athletes have to ask ourselves that question, I think it's only fair for, the governance of the same sport to ask themselves the same question and say, how are we getting better? And how are we actually going to improve and start, we say we want players to, leave winning Wimbledon aside. We're really far away from winning Wimbledon. We're still not we don't have representatives apart from, doubles with Tania and Lee and Hesh, Rohan Bopanna here and there. But we don't have consistent representation at the biggest events in the world. And there has to be a reason behind that. And there needs to be a fix to the problem. So, while in many sports we are taking, several steps ahead, I think in many sports we are not. And tennis happens to be one of those sports where we really need to pull our socks up and just find ways to get better. Vikrant, you look like you have a point on this, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to find out from you. I mean, this thing, again, has bothered me for close to 2 decades now. I mean, pardon me for saying this, but did we set a wrong case study when Leander and Mahesh had been winning Grand Slams in doubles? And there were many youngsters in India who thought maybe, this is our gateway. Let's play doubles. And that is why, as you said, you're not having representation. You're not having a serious contender who can actually go and win Wimbledon singles.
I mean, Vikrant, I would say it in a couple of different ways. One of the best ways to measure whether we're actually doing well in sport or not is to see the international representation. And in a sport like tennis, you would look at a country like Spain, you would look at a country like France, Italy, America, Russia, obviously now with Medvedev, Rublev. There's a lot of players out there who are, killing it in the world stage. And you would see, how many players are they actually putting out there? And when you look at a sport like cricket, it's obviously easy to see because we have fantastic bowlers, fast bowlers, spinners. We have great batsmen at different stages in the batting order coming through. And they're doing it in different forms of the game, and they're doing it internationally as well. Now, in a sport like tennis, it's very simple to see. We just don't have that representation. For me, yes, we did set a wrong precedent because they did have a lot of success, undoubtedly, which you can't take away from them. They were at the top of the world in doubles, but certainly not in singles. And even with Tania, I think one of the biggest mistakes Indian sport has made is not capitalize on the success that Sania Mirza had, between 2005 and 2015. Even when she played singles, she was top 30 in the world in singles. And since then, we haven't really seen anybody break through the top 100, and neither have we seen anybody very close, and in the men's section as well. I mean, we're talking about winning Wimbledon. I hate to be the one to burst the bubble, but we're really far away from that because right now we don't have representation at Wimbledon, let alone winning, and in order to be a serious contender, I think you need to be top 10. And the last guy who was close was Vijay Amritraj, who was 16 in the world.
Yeah,
Ramesh was around 20, 25. Myself, I was 62, but I'm sorry, I wasn't a contender by any means. And since then, we haven't really seen anybody come close. So again, the question isn't let's criticize. The question is, how do we get better? How do we now create a wave of players where we have, let's say 10 guys inside the top 200 in the world? Maybe out of those 10 guys, 3 or 4 break through the top 100. And how do we make this consistent? Because if we don't make this consistent, like Rahul said, we're we're not producing athletes, but athletes are producing themselves despite the system. And unfortunately, in many sports, that is where we stand. So again, it's not about criticism, it's about constructive criticism, it's about getting better. And how do we actually improve this? And how do we make sure that this doesn't happen so that the future generations do have a fair shot at perhaps winning Wimbledon?
Rahul, you wanted to make a point. I'll come to you,
Like
I have a question for you. Yeah, please go on. Sorry.
I would just like to add here, I mean, comparing cricket with other sports, and especially individual sports, is very different. I mean, cricket has been fortunate that money has kept coming in. I mean, if you go back about 30, 40 years back, where Indian team was, probably we were something similar to what Bangladesh is in world cricket right now. But because a billion population following the game, money coming in, ecosystem everything, the economics around the game getting better, infrastructure getting better, technology, science and technology coming in, and all that. But I still feel in cricket, we're still not arrived because the money is coming in, but the players are still not getting what they should be getting. Just for an example, if we compare a real hero, a real hero to a real hero, like a cricketer to a Bollywood star, if you compare two, let's say Harbhajan, and you compare someone equivalent to Harbhajan in Bollywood, probably end up getting about 10 times more than what Harbhajan would have won in the last 4 or 5 years, because that's because the money is coming in cricket, but still not going the way it should be going to the players. And now coming to other sports, imagine an athlete who has to work hard, probably the fitness regime that is required for that, the strength and conditioning or the rehab or the nutrition or the monitoring that is required for an athlete, let's say 100-meter sprinter, just to improve a fraction of a second of timing to better his timing or better a record, and getting no support, whereas cricket is getting support. So it becomes difficult. As Som said, tennis, obviously, a lot of kids want to play, but for them to play from early childhood days, you need someone to support financially, mentally, and it's not a growth in 1 year. It's about supporting for 15, 20 years to create an athlete. So I think cricket has been fortunate to a certain extent, maybe because our politicians or our corporates love the glamour around it, and they also get visibility, so they've been pumping in money. But it's not happening in other sports, and even if that happens, I mean, if you look at the systems in China or Russia or US, wherever, it's starting early, and it's a systematic growth of a kid, and they pump in money for that kid. If they find some talent, they pump in money to grow him from where he is at the grassroots level to taking him all the way up. But that's not happening in other sports at the moment. It's happening in cricket, but I still feel that it's getting, the system is still not working the best way it should be working, and the money is, it goes into different and maybe wrong hands here and there occasionally or frequently. So I think there's a lot to improve. We are going up, but there's lots more to improve, and it can get better very quickly if our systems and if our administration improves.
Thank you, Rahul. Vikrant, I actually had a question. You know, this was a question asked to me. I was giving a lecture to a batch of students, and they asked me this question that, you know, why does the Indian media cover cricketers mostly and not people from the other sports? And is that a reason why the money is only flowing to one game, because the popularity comes because of the media exposure? Is that something which is a gap that you feel? And you are in that business. You talk to a lot of sportsmen all the time. Is there a gap?
Partly true. Partly true. I think the media is responsible. Partly true. 70s and the 80s, you had hockey on radio, you had cricket on radio. But then cricket, like Rahul said, just went north. And hockey, because the organizations and the associations did not want the media to cover the tournaments, just faded away. Now the fact is, what does the media do? Honestly, it's business. It can't be social service alone. That you say, okay, so we'll put out all the sports on television, no matter if anybody is watching or not. See, ultimately, you've got to have the eyeballs. Now, you know, there's a myth. This is a wrong myth. People think that India is a sports-loving country. India is a cricket-loving country. India is not a cricket-loving country. If India is a cricket-loving country, you would have 40,000 people sitting in the stadiums to watch a test match. They don't. You will have 40,000 inside an IPL game and 40 outside. Rahul would be getting hundreds and hundreds of calls for the tickets and the passes. India is a cricketer-loving country. You need a Harbhajan Singh, a Sachin Tendulkar, a Virat Kohli. Unfortunately, if Pujara gets 100, is that going to get the crowds back into the stadiums? Ideally, it should, but it doesn't. It doesn't. So the point is that, yes, media is responsible, but so are the people. I mean, television ratings would come a week after the event. On YouTube, on Sports Talk, we get that almost instantly. But this year, the Olympics were a bit different. Thankfully, people were watching when the Indians were winning. And I think Neeraj Chopra is your right template right now. I mean, for any box that you want to take. Is he making money? I think he is. He's a non-cricketer, by the way. Is he somebody who will get endorsements? I think he will. Is he eccentric? Yes, he is. So if Neeraj Chopra can, so can others. And I think the media was also following him now. The problem is, unlike cricket, other sports do not share their calendars. They do not get the media on board. In cricket, you know what to cover and when. Hockey, yes, if there's an international game going on, you would know the result. Or maybe the match would be telecast on some channel. But otherwise, you do not get any access. And with the other games as well.
Thank you, Vikrant.
I'll briefly give you an example.
Yes, sure.
Briefly. I think one of India's, before Neeraj Chopra, one of India's biggest sporting achievements was when Abhinav Bindra won a gold medal in Beijing. At 10:30 in the morning, he won that gold medal. I was live on Aaj Tak. At that time, Doordarshan was showing the live coverage, and we cut live. So we had the last shot live. We had the Indian tricolor going up live. We had the medal ceremony live. And I thought maybe, we've arrived as a nation. So 1 week after the event, we got the ratings. And Aaj Tak was number one. So we had some 180 or 190 TRP points. And the rival was some 110 or 105. So we were the clear winners. But to give you an example, those days, if India were playing Zimbabwe in a one-day match, the post-match would be about 300 points. If it were a good team like Australia, it'll be about 600 points. When Harbhajan and the Indian team won that World T20 in 2007, Aaj Tak got 1,980 points. The peak was 1,980 versus Abhinav Bindra's 170. And when they won the World Cup in 2011, at 11 o'clock at night, Aaj Tak had 3,900 TRP points. So you just explain me what to do.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I think that's very insightful. And it sort of leads to another side of the story. I think there's been a general consensus here that, fame and fortune is good. Some get it, some don't get it very early in their lives, but then they do get it. There's the other side, there's a school of thought where, sudden fame and fortune, a lot of people believe that, a lot of people can't handle it. And, with all due respect, we've seen some, cricket losing supremely talented Mr. Vishwanath and Vinod Kambli to this at some point. We had, Prithvi, who obviously faced the heat from BCCI. We also saw KL Rahul and Hardik Pandya, who were sent back from Australia for their comments on TV. In 2008, when Anil Kumble retired, he made a point and he said that, Indian players should be educated on how to handle fame and fortune. And there's been a rise of obviously other sports in the last 2 decades or so. My question to, I think, each one of you, and very quickly we can take your point of view, is what are your thoughts on this issue? I mean, do you feel young players are unable to handle sudden fame and fortune now? And is it going to affect the performance, or do they need mentoring and guidance? And I'm going to ask Rahul first, because, you are, obviously representing a team which is, picking up players at very, very high cost. So I'm just trying to understand your point of view. Do you feel that this is something that most of the young players that you pick may not be able to handle? Or is that happening that you see anyways?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the background which matters. Honestly, I mean, again, I'll break it up in 2 things. India has a huge percentage of population which is below poverty line, right? And in that case is now, because the money coming in sports, a lot of kids are playing and parents are fine or whatever, because there's no interference, and they play and they come their own way. But when they come into the system, I'm not over a system at IPL, that's a top level. But when you come into the system, you come at the state level. When a kid comes at the age of 14, at the age of 15 or whatever, and then grows it playing under 14, 16, 19, and comes to the top level, within that period, I mean, as an association or as a state governing body, administrative body, they need to do some work in terms of, because I always believe that if I'm playing for Delhi and I've come in at the age of 14, that's my foundation years in terms of learning a lot of things, education, playing a sport, and learning, you know, the what do you call, the common sense in terms about being worldly wise, or whatever you call it. So that has to be inculcated by the association, because you're spending more time playing cricket and being in the system of cricket. But what happens there is it's all about the game selection and play and nothing else. I'll also say at the top level, when you talk about the first class level, a cricketer comes in, starts playing 19 or 20 when he gets into the Ranji team. He retires. Someone who plays at his best would probably retire at the age of 35. Few of them would go up and play for India and they make the life. But there's so many cricketers who came in at the age of 19, playing till the age of 35, played so many years, and that's the span of a cricketer's life, and that's his career. And the moment he retires, there's a vacuum. He doesn't know what to do. There's nothing he doesn't know. There are a few fortunate, thanks to IPL and all, got involved. I mean, I would say my case as well. I was injured when I played last game. I played for India. I was in 2001. I had an injury. And I was already looking ahead because I knew that I'm not the same bowler anymore. And while I was playing, because I was fortunate of my background, I could create some kind of resource for myself to earn outside cricket. And I was looking ahead, right? But and still when I got involved in IPL, I was like, I had no idea about how to go about things. I was fortunate that I had good organization who helped me to learn and grow. But I'm saying, as an association, as a sports body, it's the moral responsibility that while the kid is playing sport, you also look after the other aspect which is required for the cricketer. Well, he's going to retire sometime, or an athlete is going to retire sometime, or while he's playing, he's supposed to handle fame and fortune or the pressures. But there's no work on that part. And that's the sad part, because it's like a commodity. Honestly, it's a good commodity or a bad commodity. It's a good commodity. You keep leveraging the commodity, and the commodity also goes up. The ecosystem grows, but a bad commodity is just thrown. And let's say if there's a talent, he's got an issue, or he or she has got an issue, there's no one to look at that. They just judge a player by, okay, he's performing, he's good to us, he's got issues, he's bad to us, very much. There's no middle path. And I think that middle path is very important. And that has to come in, and it will come in, because when the compliance starts coming in, all these aspects will also be taken care of.
Ajay, do you see this as that the youngsters are unable to handle the sudden fame and fortune today, with the amount of money that is flowing into the game of cricket particularly? And I'm going to ask the other two panelists also to speak about their sport. But particularly in cricket, we've seen a lot of money flowing in. So do you see this as a challenging problem, that they are unable to handle the fame, and other instances that you've come across perhaps?
Well, it could happen. I've not seen a single one, to be honest, that were not handling their fame or money. Obviously, when you are in the limelight, you tend to make few mistakes, and those mistakes become so big. Everyone gets involved, media and other people gets involved, and when you are no one, you make the same mistakes, but no one is bothered. No one knows. I have made a lot of mistakes while I was playing. But I made sure, I promised to myself, no matter whatever happened, for me, money wasn't that important. Of course, it was a byproduct, what I was doing. Playing cricket was my first priority, and playing for India was something, like eating food for me every day. If I don't play for India, I would not sleep. For me, playing for India was the most important thing. And yes, I've made many mistakes, not just one or twice. I've been banned a couple of times, and there's no shame me saying that. But I made sure, I promised myself, I'll become better person, better player than what I was yesterday, and come back stronger. And money and all these sort of things, you need to handle on your own, because this is a byproduct, what you're doing. If you don't play cricket, what will happen? No money, no fame, nothing will come to you. So my advice to all the youngsters who are playing, getting big money, they deserve that, and they deserve even more. But make sure while you're going up, make sure you are trying to be as humble as you were when you were no one. So this would be my advice. So that's exactly how I have lived my life. While I was growing up, I had the money, I had everything, I could buy everything, anything. But I made sure that, I stay humble, because if I don't remain humble, in the end, nobody will nobody will recognize me for what I have achieved on the field. But as a person, what I am, I want people to know me, what I am as a person.
Thank you, Baji. So, in your case, you just mentioned that there are hardly 7 or 8 people who've actually ended up making money in tennis as far as India is concerned. Is this a problem that you saw with youngsters who suddenly come into the limelight? I mean, look at some of the youngsters today, Yuki and the others. Is that something that is prevalent in your sport as well?
I mean, honestly, I think at the end of the day, we're human beings. So I think we should look at this problem more as a sociological problem than as a problem that, happens just to Indians. Because I mean, there was a statistic with the NBA and the NFL where over 50% of the people that retire end up going bankrupt within the first 5 years after retirement. So people don't know how to handle fame and fortune is not something that only happens to Indians. It happens to anybody worldwide, and with any profession, really. So I think, yes, to answer your question, which you started with in the beginning, I think apart from media training alone, there needs to be a certain amount of responsibility that we need to teach our the next generation on A, what is fame, B, why is it important. There used to be a funny conversation. I had this with a few of my friends that were on the tour, and we actually said that once a person gets fame, regardless of what field it is in, whether it's in Bollywood or acting or anything else, we give them 2 or 3 years, because fame does change people. That's just the truth. It does change people. But within a couple of years, you see which direction that person is going in, and oftentimes, they stray away to a place where we feel like it's hard to bring them back to some sort of grounded reality. And in many cases, you see people who come back because they have a good circle of friends around them, they have family around them that keeps them even keeled. And yeah, in terms of education, I think we definitely need to educate our athletes, and not just athletes, anybody who does hit that level of fame and fortune, to have some level of reality with economics and how to spend it, so that people are not going bankrupt within the first few years of retirement.
Thank you, sir. Tania, you obviously achieved fame at a much younger age, and you've been seeing that since you grew from there. What was it like? Suddenly becoming famous people. Sorry, I'll repeat that. So you started obviously at a much younger age, and you received the recognition when you were much younger. Did it actually make a difference to your performance in the game, or what is it like today? After so many years of playing chess.
I think, as Rahul mentioned, that, individual sports just has a very different trajectory. And in general, I think the questions applied to pretty much cricket and every other sport, it just changes the shape completely, whether it's the money being pumped in, whether it's media attention coming in, or whether it's handling fame and fortune. It's just a different level of everything. And definitely chess, one of the newer sports. I think the problem, I can speak for my sport, is not so much handling the money coming in, because that anyway happens only if you're at the very top. It's a few handful of people who make that kind of money. And that's also, it's what makes sport, I think. It is the fact that it's hard. It is the fact that it's brutal. It is the fact that you need to be bloody good at it to be able to play for the country or to make it to the top. Grind and hustle can't be replaced. So I think for chess, it's more around dealing with this fame thing. I think especially today, in today's time, I'll give you a recent example. Pragnananda, who just beat Magnus Carlsen. I think I'm sure you guys read about it. It's all over the news and the media. It is about handling this super attention and the pressure it creates around it, the expectations it suddenly creates around it. We all know that Indian athletes have immense talent, immense hunger, immense desire to work really hard. But when there is suddenly so much attention on a child who's 12 years old, or in his case, 16 years old, and suddenly everyone is talking, it's so important for him to be able to handle that and that level expectation, because you need to give them the space to just grow into an athlete. There's still a very long way to go. And a very important point that I think Harbhajan and Somdev both made was that it comes down to the human aspect of it more than the sports aspect of it. And that's the support system around you, how grounded you can be about it, and how you can continue focusing on the right things once this comes into your life. For me personally, when I did win the British Championship when I was 8 years old, and it happened to me for the first time, I was just very far away from that whole thing, because media was not what it's today. Even though it was all over, even though it was in the news, but I wasn't exposed to it because there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, there was no this fast exposure to big news. And for me, it was a lot easier to just focus on my game. But I think this is a very relevant challenge for younger athletes today, a lot more than what it was in my time.
Thank you, Tania. Vikrant, when it comes to the media, particularly with young athletes, media has obviously got a role to play as far as the exposure is concerned. How do you see media, in the future with the kind of sports stars that we are sort of building up for the future? What will be the role of media in actually ensuring that they get the due that they deserve at the right time? Because we do see a disparity in the media, depending on which sport you're going to pick and talk about. But is that going to change?
More than the sports persons, I think it's the media that needs to create superstars from sports. See, cricket is not what it used to be, Gaurav. And, till about 4 or 5 years ago, you would have this nation versus nation contest and context. There's a test match starting tomorrow in Mohali.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a historic test match. Virat Kohli's 100th test match. Rohit Sharma will be making his debut as a test captain. There's no buzz. There's no buzz in Delhi. There's no buzz in Mumbai. There's no buzz in Calcutta. And I remember if 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, there was a test match happening in some city in India, you would have that buzz across the country. There is buzz now for the IPL. And Rahul is here. But for the IPL, there's definitely some buzz. I wasn't a firm believer in the IPL. I thought maybe, it was just entertainment. But I think now, I also wait for those 2 months. I wait for the 2 months of the IPL. I wait for India versus Australia. I wait for India versus England. And the ICC tournaments, where in the league phases, you will get just 2 good games. And you'll be playing some ABCD teams. So I think in cricket also, like I said, there are no superstars. I mean, honestly, there is Virat, there is Rohit, there is Bumrah, maybe Rishabh Pant, and who? So Neeraj Chopra is what we need. In tennis, we need somebody. In badminton, you've got the likes of Singh. So the media would need to create these superstars, because the media would also need to feed off something or the other. Even, like I said, even nation versus nation test matches, the one-dayers and the T20s, even the T20s people are not watching. Do not believe what the ratings are saying. I mean, the sports channels, whatever they say. People are not watching irrelevant T20s or one-dayers as well. So it's time for the other sports to come in. It's time for the likes of Tania or even Singh to go to the fraternity. And to tell the organizations and the associations and the sports persons, go talk to the media. Don't be afraid of the media. Yes, there is social media also. And I think social media is a curse. Like Virendra Sehwag once told me, social media pe likh lo, padho mat. And you've got to do the same. But I think, like I said earlier, the media badly needs superstars. They badly need to also look beyond cricket. Because IPL is there, like I said, there'll be an ICC tournament, India versus Australia, India versus England, that's it. So for the remaining months of the year, you would need Neeraj Chopra to do well and the others to do well as well.
Thank you, Vikrant. I think, I'm very of time as well. So I have one question that probably the entire panel can react to. One is, you talk about the glory of sports in India now and, the number of people who we start seeing adapting to obviously different kind of sports. That's one part. But going back, to the grassroots level, what has been the role of parents in India encouraging their kids to take up sports as a career. And I think back in the days, it wasn't the way it is today. Right? And that's largely due to the money that has come into different sports as well, where parents are encouraging their kids to take up sports as a career choice. You all have, played the game. Baji, Tania, yourselves, you guys have made a career out of it. What was it like in your time? Were your parents encouraging? And do you see that difference now? Because, one of the articles that I read about, from Gary Lineker, he said, one of the reasons why England has not been able to produce too many successful footballers is because the parents put so much pressure on the kids to perform when they are actually training that the kids actually eventually drop out of the sport themselves. So is that a problem in India as well, that you see that where there's a lot of pressure, competitive spirit that the parents put in, on the touchelines there, standing there and, asking their kids to sort of, do much more than they are expected to do? Is that one of the problems that will help us, overcome a problem of not having too many sports stars, or will it actually help us, bring many more in the game? So, Baji, I mean, if you would want to just start off by talking about your experience when you were younger and how the parents sort of encouraged you.
See, Gaurav, I lived in a very different sort of mohalla where, we had different sort of communities. My father wanted to, make sure that I stay away from such people where a lot of dodgy stuff was happening around. So that's the reason I went to the ground. And after going to the ground, my father actually never came to check if I am doing okay, or he kind of knew कि अच्छा वो संगत इसकी अच्छी है, संगत अच्छी होनी जरूरी है. Or I think I got the full support from my parents. There was not even a single time they asked me to do this or that or do something else in life. I'm grateful that I had those, parents and that support from my, father, mother, and also my sister. I have 5 sisters. They never asked me, why don't you just do something with your father and earn more money to run this house? So I was one of those grateful, fortunate, or I'm grateful that I had that sort of family. But if people are putting pressure onto their kids, look, you take this sport or that sport because you'll make money, that's wrong. I would like to say, just see, I'm a very, very young parent. I have 2 kids. I would like to, give freedom to my kids. That's all I can say. Whatever they like to become, whatever they choose to become in life, I want to be their support system. I don't want to force them to become a wrestler or a tennis player or do something different than what they want to do. I just want to be the support what I can be in best manner. So I hope all the other parents also must be thinking in the same manner, because it is our duty to give what your kids need, rather than you're seeing yourself what you couldn't do it. You're thinking that your son might do it or your daughter might do it. So I want to give them the freedom, whatever they want to become, whether sportsman or don't play sports, but just become very good human. That's what matter in the end. That's what my father taught me. Be a good human being in life. That's what will matter in the end.
Rahul, I'm going to ask you this question because you meet a lot of parents when you are in the process of scouting. How do you see parents today? I mean, of course, cricket brings a lot of fame and fortune. So, there is an encouragement from the parents to play this game. But, what's your experience been like when it comes to parents?
I think, if I try and compare it from our days, because our days, the media wasn't that big in terms of broadcasting matches and this and that. But now the way the matches are available all around, parents watching cricket and other sports on TV and seeing the glamour around it and blah, 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 they expect a lot out of the kids. They want to live their life through their kids. So they perceive something for their kids that, okay, this kid should become a cricketer, my kid should become a cricketer, and then try and live their dreams through their kid. And I've come across many parents who, at the age of 3 or 4, do you think which academy my kid should go to, or blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, this is too early. Let him just be what he wants to be. Let him play in the mall or in the streets or whatever. And then later on, the time will come. But I know, then they would come up to me and say, no, I think it's time. We got to start early. And there must be a system where this and that. So, and then on the other hand, I've met parents who are like just happy with what their kids are doing. All they want to do is that, okay, sports is a good medium to achieve a lot in education, the normal education as well. And they want them to play sports so that they're mentally stronger and they can focus better in the studies and blah, blah, blah. So I've seen both sides, but again, it's very different from city to towns and villages. like in the cities where everyone is educated, everyone's into working, people are doing jobs, and there are aspirations and all. They react very differently. Parents expect the kids to be picking up something and doing something. But if I've been to smaller towns as well, and there's some interesting stories which I've come across, which is like the kids just happen to play. Like in Bachchi's case, his father wanted to keep him away from some nasty stuff around in the neighborhood, and he was happy that he's playing. So they're not looking at any aspiration. It's just that he's happy that Bachchi is playing on the ground, and he'll be safe, and he'll be a good human being by doing that and not being in the neighborhood. So I've come across cases in villages and towns where parents are responding. They are farming and doing everything, and the kids are doing whatever they're doing and pick up a sport. So there are two sides I've seen, and I see the city life, the expectations are high on kids, because even otherwise, but forget about sports, parents expect a lot out of kids. Okay, you got to study, you got to make this, you got to do this and do that. And it's happening in sports as well, whether it's studies or sports. But on the other end, the smaller towns and villages, it's the pressure is not that much on kids in terms of what they should be doing, because they just move with the flow of life,
Yeah. Vikrant, you're a father. What's your take when do you encourage your kids to play cricket because you play that game, or are you a parent who's given them a free choice to pick what they like?
Well, as it is, they don't want to study, and I don't have small kids. The elder one is 18, the younger one is about 15. So they do play cricket like I used to, and I don't know if they'd play at some level, or would they be playing at the top level. But there's a problem, and this is a very genuine problem. And the problem is that, yes, they want to play cricket, but we also want them to study. We also want good grades, because that is how they will get admissions in top colleges. Now, when I was playing cricket, and Harbhajan is much younger to me. In fact, he came to Chandigarh when I was just finishing off with my game. I would get that sports quota, junior national championship, or a university medal, and I could go to any top college. I suppose now the grades have changed. I mean, it's just additional marks. So you tell me, if there's a budding youngster, if there's a youngster who's in class 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th, you can't expect him to score 82%. And then the certificate would give him additional 10%. Even then, that'll add up to just 92. Would I be a stupid parent? I would want them to go to college. I would much rather tell them, chodo yaar, if you don't want to play cricket, leave it. You'd go and study. There is the dichotomy. You want them to play, but you also want good grades. How is that possible? I mean, that is not possible. In good olden times, when Harbhajan was younger, or Rahul was younger, Tania still is, or Som was younger, it was a different world. It was an ideal world. This one is not. So that's the problem. And Gaurav, one thing, again, there should not be any pressure on the kids. And I've seen stories when I was very young, or when I was younger in the media, I would look at 5-year-old or a 6-year-old with their parent practicing every day. And those kids never made it big, because the parents at that young age put so much pressure on a kid, he could not understand. So maybe after a while, that kid would start hating that sport rather than loving it. But a way has to be found. And just the way I started, I tell them, whatever you play, whichever level that you play, but just understand the value of sport. You win or you don't win, but do not overemphasize yourself when you win, and do not brood a lot when you lose.
Thank you, Vikrant. I know I've been nudged a couple of times now. We are very close to the time of closure. But before I pass on to Vanch, and he may ask a couple of questions from the audience before we wrap up. There's something that we have never done at the LIF, and I would like to do it today at the sports panel. There's a ball that I have with Harbhajan Singh's signature, which he was very kind enough to give me when we were shooting for our film very, very recently. And I would like to give this to somebody who may be able to answer a quiz question that I'm going to put about, which is about Harbhajan. And people in the audience, you can quickly write, then whoever probably responds the first, which the moderators would know at the back, will perhaps get this ball couriered to them, very soon. The question that I have is, in the 2007 T20 World Cup, when India played Pakistan in the group stage on 14th of September, Harbhajan Singh took 1 wicket in that match. I would like to know who that player was. And you can put your answers on the chat mode. And Harbhajan Singh is not allowed to answer that question. But thank you, panelists. I know we could have spoken for another hour or so, but there are some questions from the audience we'd like to take before we wrap up. And once you can come back and ask some of those questions very quickly before we can say thank you to the panelists.
Thank you for that. So we have some few questions that have been sent to you by our attendees. One, I think this is for Somdev. How big is an association's backing in developing a player? For a number of years, we've seen the All India Tennis Association not having a proper structure. And the All India Tennis Association did not manage to even send Rohan's entry for the Olympics, which was our best shot for a medal. With Rohan and Tania playing mixed doubles, do you see a change coming in the near future?
I honestly, I wish I was given a few more happy questions, because I honestly am a happier person. And I don't feel, I don't want to sound like someone that's always critical. But no, I don't see a change happening anytime soon. And to be honest, I think an association's or a federation's role in player development should be very important. Because, let's assume that you're a very talented 12, 13, 14-year-old. You're going to have a lot of questions on, what are your next steps? How do you get from point A to point B? What are the most efficient ways of doing that? What events should I be playing? How should I be schooling? How should I improve my strength and conditioning? So on and so forth. Unfortunately, where we currently stand, our federation doesn't have the answers, nor do they have the interest from what you can see with not just me, but also plenty of players that have come. So no, unfortunately, I don't see the federation playing a very important role in player development. There are pros and cons to that, though. As a player in an individual sport, luckily you don't rely on the federation for things other than entry into an Olympics or selection to a Davis Cup match. And luckily for professional tennis players, that happens 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year. And you still have 30, 35 weeks where you can be playing on the ATP or the WTA tour and earning your bread the old-fashioned way, which is just going out there. And I think Bhaji said it really well in the beginning, is understanding your love for the sport, being a student of the game, and just trying to get better and better, and not sleeping well unless you know that you put everything into the sport. So in that case, we are lucky as tennis players where we don't rely on the federation to go out and actually enter tournaments and play on the tour. But that being said, I do think that an association or a federation's role in player development is very important. And if we do want to see results in the future, if we do want to see a wave of players, if we do want to see, talent just bursting through in numbers, then we do need to see our federation just get better. Simple.
Thank you. So my next question is for Tania. So franchise leagues in India have become a recently popular strategy to promote sports following the success of the IPL, the Pro Kabaddi League and the ISL. Do you think this has been a viable strategy to increase the popularity of chess and the participation of Indian people in chess as an international platform?
100%. I think the question, whoever asked the question also answered it themselves. I think leagues are so important, especially in a big country like India, where we've been talking about this, that how sports does become a viable career, or you're making money if you're right at the top and you're performing, let's say you're in the top 10. But of course, there are a lot of talented players, because only 10 people will make it to the top 10. But there are hundreds of very, very strong players who are performing all over. And I think leagues play a super important role in developing sport in a country and making it an option for people to take it up and give that kind of grind and time that it requires. For chess, it does come down to, I think, it's funny when the whole world was falling apart with the pandemic. Well, it's not funny at all, but chess was the only thing that survived and actually found itself in sort of a golden space because it moved online completely. And then there was this crazy popularity that happened. In fact, I think the achievements that we have now, the way they are covered by the media, we had a lot more of that even pre-pandemic, but it was never noticed. And I think when chess moved online and we saw the kind of interest that it developed, it brought communities together. That's the beauty about, I think, sports in general, that, you know, it transcends so many different boundaries. With chess, it happened in the last 2 years. And that's why now we see these leagues coming on, something that players have been fighting on for years, because we know that it happens all over Europe. It happens in countries that perform at the very top in Olympics. They've got these league systems in place. And finally, it's happening in India. And you're absolutely right that it goes down to the popularity that we've seen in the sport over the last 2-3 years.
Thank you. So my next question is for Vikrant. Oh, sorry.
I think Harbhajan.
I think you're muted.
Harbhajan, you're muted. You're on mute.
I think this is just getting a bit too serious. Ye hona chahiye, wo hona chahiye. During the pandemic, me and Tania, we played chess, and guess who was the winner? Me.
There's absolutely no truth in that story. we did have an event where we did play chess. About him winning, that needs to be certified. I can neither confirm nor deny.
See, what happens is, I'm telling people to dream big. Only if you dream big, things will happen. So I'm dreaming to beat you one day. Maybe, if not, abhi, to shayad mere bacche aage jaake beat kar sake kabhi.
We were just talking about not living your dreams to your kids, Harbhajan. We just
spoke
about
chess
that.
Ki dream hai. Chess ki dream hai. Cricket ki nahi hai.
Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
Done.
Okay, so my next question would be for Vikrant. So do you see, as a representative of the media, do you see Bollywood and the news and the media playing a part in paving a road for the medal in the Olympics? Like how Sachdev India did for hockey, with both men and women's hockey teams doing very well in Tokyo.
See, again, did the Indian women do well because of the Sachdev movie, which came in 2007? I don't know. But it's a fact that the biopics do certainly motivate youngsters. I mean, my son, when he watched Bhag Milka Bhag, was impressed. I mean, he was motivated. There'd be other kids as well. And I think for the society also, there's recognition. There was this thunder on the sisters. They've not done well recently. But again, they could be trendsetters. So I think if the social media, or like you said, Bollywood or biopics, if they can, why not?
So my next question will be for both Rahul and Mr. Harbhajan. So this is more of a light-hearted question. It's from Aryan. Who do you think has done the best recently in the IPL auction?
I think I will be biased, but I can answer that.
You are asking me. I think Chennai have done well. You know, they have taken most of their player back. And apart from Chennai, I think Lucknow and Delhi, they have made their team very, very strong. Mumbai used to be very, very strong team. I'm not sure whether they're going to be as strong as they were like in the last 3 to 4 years, or maybe 15 years, you know, from the first IPL. They always be a very, very strong team. But I think if I have to pick one, that got to be either Delhi or Chennai. I think they have done really well to pick a strong team. Rahul might differ with my answer.
I completely agree with whatever you say, because that's your job. You can talk about it right now, openly, but not while you're playing. So I would say, I think the beauty of IPL is that, you know, every big auction, you get a purse and you go out there and try and make a team, and you go with your best interest, which is going to work for your setup. And I think this year, with the addition of 2 more teams, and the demand supply wasn't that great, because the teams have been added, but the supply of players is still the same. So there were areas where most of the teams, I think, struggled. They couldn't achieve every possible thing that they require to have a good balanced side. Having said that, I think the interesting part about IPL is that sometimes it's better to be underdogs as well, and you just come up well.
Well, you don't want to start on that Mumbai has never been underdogs. So this year
we
maybe they
try
are.
to be underdogs.
But yes, you'll expect Mumbai to do well. You know, since they have match winners in Rohit Sharma, Bumrah, Pollard. I'm not sure how much he's left with, but you know, yes, these two need to fire. And Ishan Kishan is a big gun you guys have picked.
It's what, as we say in the game, that the game is not over till it's over. Like last year, MI, after winning 2 championships, we were one of the best teams, right? But we were nowhere. So it's on that day, around that time. So let's see how it's gonna go.
We'll talk about it, Rahul.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm actually approaching Vikrant. Get me a job there.
Thank you.
Yes, Vansh.
Before we end this panel, we would like to announce the winner of the quiz, which was Krishna, who correctly guessed that Shahid Afridi was the wicket that Harbhajan took.
You need to check with Harbhajan Singh if that's the correct answer.
Is that correct?
Yes. It was.
That is the correct answer. So congratulations, Krishna. We'll send you the ball as soon as possible. But thank you very much, panelists. You guys have taken your time today from different parts of the world now. So Somdev, good morning to you again, and enjoy your rest of the day. And for all of us here, good evening. And thank you very much, everyone who's attended this in the UK, and to all the students. Thank you very much for this. Thank you.